So I'm Greg Lockwood. I'm doing monopolies in the pharmaceutical industry. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, does society receive the greatest benefit from current monopolistic patent practices or from a competitive market? The two variables we must consider are the economic and social costs of a monopoly versus a free market. So certain drugs can alleviate severe pain and even death. Therefore, firms can charge the parents of a child with cancer hundreds of thousands of dollars a year because the willingness of the parent to pay is so high and there are no alternatives. Firms can exploit the group of people by developing the only known cure for rare conditions. Prescription drugs for rare conditions make up 1% of prescriptions sold, but 32% of spending on pharmaceuticals, while much more widespread diseases are a lower priority for research. Corporations use monopolistic profits to lobby for the enhancement of patent law in their industry. So patents are particularly dangerous in the pharmaceuticals market because of the elasticity of demand. In a typical monopoly, it does not maximize profit for a firm to drastically increase price because demand would fall too much. However, when the product is a necessity, such as cancer or AIDS medication, demand does not decrease as significantly with price because a sick person is still willing to pay at the higher prices for the drug. A perfect example of this is Martin Shkreli, CEO of Turning Pharmaceuticals, who bought manufacturing rights to Daraprim. He immediately hiked the price of the prescription 5,000%. So let's look at the economics behind this. To begin, what differs a monopolist from a competitive firm when deciding production? Well, marginal revenue is horizontal for competing firms, but downward sloping for monopolies. This results in higher price but a lower marginal revenue. Monopolistic firms have no supply curve but still maximize profit the same way as a competitive firm by producing at the output where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. Monopolies are unique because they do not produce where marginal cost equals price. Elasticity is the willingness of consumers to buy with increase in price. The more elastic the demand curve, the less willing a consumer is to buy a product if price is increased. This means that inelastic demand curves still buy a significant quantity of goods even though the price rises drastically. So market power is a monopolist's ability to set market price higher than the competitive equilibrium. In situations where buying the product is a necessity, like life-saving pharmaceuticals, firms with monopolies have astronomical market power. This allows them to mark up prices drastically. We measure this with the Lerner Index. The Lerner Index is the ratio of the difference between price and marginal cost to the price. The greater the index, the higher the markup firms can charge above equilibrium price. The index ranges from 0 to 1, 1 being the most market power. For example, if it costs $8 to make Daraprim and its monopolized market price is $750, it has a market power of 0.989. As we can see, they have almost the maximum level of market power allowed in the Lerner Index formula. So how does this affect public welfare? Well, public welfare is a measure of market efficiency and is a sum of producer and consumer surplus. It is maximized in a perfectly competitive market. The gray area is loss surplus for both producers and consumers, known as deadweight loss. Because of monopolies, decreasing marginal revenue causes the profit maximizing price to shift away from the perfectly competitive equilibrium. This means that society experiences less benefit from a monopolist because overall welfare is decreased as a whole. We can limit deadweight loss by removing barriers to entry to the market. An example of this is when other companies besides the United States Postal Service, who had a monopoly on overnight delivery, entered the market. Share of the market's business dropped from 77 to 59% in 8 years. This also applies to the lift of bans on certain imports. Another way to reduce market power is close substitutes, such as a textbook only sold by a single publisher. You can't buy that textbook anywhere else, but you can get a similar one from another publisher. This option alone forces the first publisher to keep its price lower. The final way to regulate monopolist market power is through government-determined price caps. The price cap sets a limit to the price of a good to the equilibrium price that would have been present in a competitive market, where marginal cost crosses the demand curve. This eliminates the deadweight loss created by a monopoly. In a truly capitalist society, social welfare is maximized and free trade occurs as often as possible. Patent law creates numerous public health, humanitarian, and societal issues, as well as causes the pharmaceutical market to operate ineffectively.